Hey, everybody, I'm Will Saletan from the Bulwark. You know, we talk a lot about politicians who are selling out democracy and the rule of law in America, but you don't often get to see one of these guys just flat out admit it on camera. Today, I got a solid example for you. I want to show you an American governor, a man who claims to be one of the Republican good guys, telling you to your face that he will not change his mind about supporting Donald Trump, even if Trump committed serious crimes. The guy I'm talking about is Chris Sununu, the governor of New Hampshire. He was interviewed this Sunday by George Stephanopoulos on ABC. Now, we have a point-by-point takedown of Sununu in the Bulwark today by JVL and the Triad, and you can find a link to that piece right below this video. So I encourage you to click on that link and go read JVL's newsletter. But I'm going to show you the video here and go through it so you can see with your own eyes what Sununu is doing. The interview starts off with Stephanopoulos asking about this week's trial in New York, where Trump faces federal charges for allegedly falsifying financial records to conceal hush money payments related to the 2016 election. Let's play a clip.
Will your support for Donald Trump continue even if he's convicted in Manhattan?
Yeah, this trial is not going to have major political ramifications that a lot of people, I think it may have. And when it comes to these issues, people see it more as reality TV at this point. They really do. And so, whether it's a conviction or what that conviction looks like, a lot of folks, they conflate all four of these different trials that he's in. I don't think it's good that he's going to be in the court, have to be in there probably 3 days a week, for a number of weeks. That takes him off the campaign trail. He'll probably go back on the campaign trail and almost like rehash what's going on. He'll try to victimize it, and that has worked for him, right? I mean, this has been going on for over a year, and his poll numbers never seem to go down because of the issue.
Okay, that's a classic dodge. Sununu can't defend Trump on the merits, so he changes the subject to politics. He says Trump is doing fine in the polls, despite all his indictments. And did you catch the part where Sununu says voters get all the cases confused? See, if Sununu actually cared about the indictments, he might try to explain to people that the cases are different from one another. But he doesn't care. In fact, instead of trying to correct the public's ignorance, Sununu is using that ignorance as a reason to pretend that the cases are just a bunch of noise and that nobody needs to pay any attention to them. But Stephanopoulos doesn't let Sununu off the hook. He digs in. Watch this.
You're going to politics, though. I'm asking you about right and wrong. You think you're comfortable with the idea of supporting someone who's convicted of a federal crime as president?
No, I don't think any American is comfortable with any of this. They don't like any of this, of course. But I mean, when it comes to actually looking at each of these trials, as they kind of take place, whether it's this year or next year, or as they kind of line up, right now this is about an election. Right. This is about politics. That's what people are judging this on. And the ultimate, decision will be in November to see where people are. But for months and even over a year, we've heard that these are the things that are going to bring Donald Trump down. It's not. And to think that the American public is going to be massively swayed by this, politically or otherwise, that's not going to happen.
Full credit to Stephanopoulos here. He manages to get Sununu to say he's not entirely comfortable with supporting a convicted criminal for president. But right away, Sununu pivots to his main point, which is that Trump's crimes, whatever they are, don't seem to bother Trump's voters enough to discourage them from supporting Trump. And since they don't care whether Trump is a criminal, Sununu says he doesn't care either. Stephanopoulos keeps pestering Sununu about the alleged crimes. And that leads to Sununu's next excuse, which is that Trump is a Republican. Check it out.
You're a governor. You're an elected official. I'm asking whether you're going to be swayed by it.
Yeah, look, nobody should be shocked that the Republican governor is supporting the Republican president.
And then Sununu gives the same excuse for ignoring what Trump did on January 6th. Watch this.
Right after that January 6th attack, I'm going to put this up on the screen. You said, it is clear that President Trump's rhetoric and actions contributed to the insurrection. The domestic terrorists who attacked the United States Capitol must be held accountable and prosecuted. Do you stand by that statement?
100%. Of course, they have to be prosecuted, and they are being prosecuted. That's good. I think his actions absolutely contributed to that. There's no question about that. I hate the election denialism of 2020. Nobody wants to be talking about that in 2024. I think all of that was absolutely terrible. But what people are going to be voting for, the reason I'm supporting not just the president, but a Republican administration.
So please explain, given the fact that you believe he contributed to an insurrection, how you can say we should have him back in the Oval Office.
It's not, because for me, it's not about him as much as it is having a Republican administration, Republican secretaries, Republican rules, a sense where states' rights comes first, individual rights comes first, parents' rights comes first.
There you go. Yeah, Trump may have done some crimes, and yeah, he tried to overthrow democracy, but the important thing is that he's a Republican. And I'm a Republican too, says Sununu. So I'm supporting him anyway. Because in 2024, being a loyal Republican means not caring about the crimes or the insurrection. No matter what the nominee of the party does, Chris Sununu is going to stick with him. What's happening in this interview is the same thing that's happened in lots of other interviews Stephanopoulos has done during the Trump years. A Republican politician comes on the show and basically demonstrates that there's no limit to their support for Trump. And Trump knows it. Remember this line from 2016 when Trump was running for president? Let's play it.
And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Did you hear that laughter from the audience? They thought Trump was joking. But here we are 8 years later, and we have Republican senators, Republican congressmen, and Republican governors like Sununu going on TV and basically saying that no matter what crimes Trump gets convicted of, they're still going to support him for president. And as for January 6th, Sununu's position is it's not really important because most voters don't think it's important. Watch this.
They're not relitigating January 6th. It's not a top issue. If you ask the average American, is January 6th a top issue when you go into the ballot box? Not even in the top 5. It doesn't mean it wasn't a significant point. It doesn't mean we all weren't extremely disappointed by his words and actions. It doesn't mean that we tap into this election denialism, which I believe I think it's terrible what he's done on the election denial. But again, it's not a top issue. People are voting on what's happening in their homes, what's happening with inflation, what's happening on the border.
This is really dangerous. And it's also really sad. Sununu, like nearly every other Republican office holder in the Trump era, is refusing to be what we used to call a leader. He's not leading, he's following. He knows what Trump did after the 2020 election. Lying about it and sending a mob to try to overturn it was wrong. But Sununu also knows that in the polls, most voters don't seem to care much about it. So instead of telling the voters that they should care about it, which is what a leader would do, Sununu is saying, they don't care about it, so why should I? Stephanopoulos tries to tell Sununu that it's crazy to take a president who tried to overthrow democracy and put that president back in power. But Sununu says it can't be crazy because it's what the people want. Watch.
That doesn't make any sense to me, Governor. I'm sorry. You're saying it's not about Trump. You're saying he would be the president. And you've said he's someone who's contributed to an insurrection.
I understand it doesn't make sense to you, George, but look at the polls. What you're telling me is you don't understand why 51% of this country is supporting Donald Trump. They're not crazy. They're not MAGA conservatives. They're not extremists.
You believe that a president who contributed to an insurrection should be president again?
As does 51% of America, George. I mean, really, I understand you're part of the media. I understand you're in this New York City bubble or whatever it is. But you got to look around what's happening across this country. It's not about just supporting Trump. It's getting rid of what we have today.
Okay, let's pause on that. Sununu says if you think a guy who tried to overthrow democracy shouldn't be president, you're living in a bubble. Because out here in the real world, people don't care. Whatever 51% of the public supports can't be crazy, according to Sununu. Now, as JVL points out, Trump doesn't actually have 51% support in the polls. It's more like 45 or 46%. But even if the 51% number were true, let's remember This is a country where we used to have majority support for things like slavery and segregation and putting Japanese Americans in camps. The whole point of being a constitutional democracy and having a Bill of Rights is that sometimes the majority is wrong. But according to Sununu, if you disagree with the majority, even on something as fundamental as respecting election results, you're just out of touch. Then, near the end of the interview, Stephanopoulos pulls out something Sununu said during the Republican primaries when Trump was running against Nikki Haley. Back then, Sununu was supporting Haley, but now Sununu wants to forget all about that. Listen to this.
He's also facing another indictment over classified documents. Previously, you've said these charges are serious and Trump should drop out of the race if he's convicted. Do you still believe that?
Well, in a primary, we fought hard in the primary. We got behind Nikki. This is the chaos that Nikki Haley and I and others warned about was going to follow Trump. That is just a complete distraction. I'd rather have Republicans on the campaign trail talking about real issues than, having to talk about this stuff. It's a complete distraction.
Because you said in the past that he should drop out if he's convicted in the classified documents case. Do you still believe that?
No. He's going to drop out after being the nominee? Of course not. That's not to be expected at all.
Essentially, Sununu is saying that the moral standard he asserted during the primaries, which was that Trump should drop out if he were found guilty in the classified documents case, no longer applies because the primaries are over. Now that Trump has wrapped up the nomination, morality goes out the window. In fact, Sununu is telling Stephanopoulos that what he said back then about Trump dropping out if he got convicted was never really about right and wrong. It was only about the distraction. Sununu is saying he didn't really care if Trump was a criminal. He only cared that having a criminal at the top of the ticket might hurt the party. But now that the party has decided to nominate Trump anyway, it doesn't matter whether Trump is a criminal. Sununu is all in. So what we have here is a portrait of the absolute moral emptiness of today's Republican Party. Even Sununu, who pretended to be one of the good guys, is falling in line and saying, forget everything I said. I will support Trump no matter what. And the interview ends with him saying exactly that. Watch.
So just to sum up, you would support him for president even if he's convicted in classified documents. You support him for president even though you believe he contributed to an insurrection. You support him for president even though you believe he's lying about the last election. You'd support him for president even if he's convicted in the Manhattan case. I just want to say the answer to that is yes, correct?
Yeah, me and 51% of America.
This is the Republican Party in 2024. It's a party completely devoid of principle. When Trump said he could commit a crime in broad daylight and not lose any support, he was right. He wasn't just right about his base, he was right about the Republican elite. And that's why, if you want to protect democracy and the rule of law in this country, you can't just get rid of Trump. You also have to get rid of ruthless collaborators like Chris Sununu. See you next time.